Good day and welcome. Today I'm going to talk about Leviathan Wakes, a 2011 novel by James S.A. Corey, which is the first novel in the 9 book Expanse series. Um, first, I'm going to talk about one of the challenges that I have in reading this book. Um, in the books that I've read, the bulk of the plot is driven by people being stubborn and refusing to accept reality. Um, in the first book, Holden isn't going to admit defeat, and he's going to keep being stubborn and do whatever he has to do to get to the result that he wants, which he, mostly does. Um, in the second book, you have the agronomist who refuses to admit that his daughter is dead and keeps driving the plot because he's not going to quit, which, let's face it, that's completely believable. Um, but very difficult for me, very difficult to read. And then in the third book, you have the daughter of one of the side characters in the first book who's out for revenge and isn't going to let anything stop her. So the reason that I find this difficult to read is if you know people with addiction, they show a lot of the same traits. They're going to be stubborn. They're not going to admit they're wrong, and they're going to keep doing whatever it is they're doing. Um, Generally speaking, um, when people start doing this, when they get into the depths of addiction, reality slaps them in the face until they die or admit that being stubborn was a bad idea and they were wrong and try and pull their lives together. So for me, reading these kinds of books where people refuse to accept reality and keep fighting until they get what they want, it's just okay. I mean, is there certain elements of learning to fight reality in order to make things better? Yeah, there is. That's just part of making the world a better place. You have to change things, which involves disrupting the existing reality. Um, Does it always work out like it does in the books? No, no, it doesn't. And like I said, that's why I find the books difficult to read. I have made it through 5 of the 9 books, and I've read a couple of the short stories, collections of short stories, novellas as well. So that's what I find difficult about The Expanse. What is good about The Expanse? Well, it turns out there's a lot of things that are really good about The Expanse. It is a science fiction novel that doesn't have faster than light drive, which really limits the scope of the novel to the solar system. Um, and it's very believable. It takes technology that mostly exists today and extrapolates and talks about, well, what if belters were real? What if people actually did go out to the asteroid belt and try and make a living? What would that kind of a solar system, I guess, universe, however you care to phrase it, look like? And it then proceeds to answer that question. There's politics and dynamics between Earth and Mars and the belts. There are factions within Earth and Mars and the belts. Um, and it answers one of the in the later books they made this comment that you have Earth keeps billions of people around living in near poverty on some kind of universal basic income type thing, just in case. Just in case something happens, we've got billions of people on Earth, and should something happen, we can recover. And Earth keeps those people around just in case. And the gap between the rich and the poor on the Earth is just really phenomenal to look at. It. You see it in the first series or first book when one of the characters who's working at the UN attempts to double cross his boss, and she puts him on the dole basically. And because he's been publicly disgraced, he's not going to get off it, and he's going to live a life of, you know, as a welfare recipient, more or less, a very poor, simple life. I mean, certainly there's, entertainment, um, bread and circuses in their modern forms exist, but yeah, his life's over. He's not going to be wealthy and powerful. He's going to be unable to get a job and living on welfare. But he's there just in case they decide they do need him later. He's still there, and that's what Earth does. Whereas on Mars and in the belts, the basic resources of life are much more difficult to obtain. And so, it drives a different philosophy towards, um, I'll say, keeping people around. So great near future science fiction. I mean, in theory, there are some things in the expanse which don't exist today, but in theory, within 5 to 10 years, assuming that we decided we wanted to go out and settle the belt, something like the expanse could exist. Layered on top of that really well developed universe is, I'll call it supernatural, but I don't think it's explicitly supernatural. It's an encounter with a superior technology. Um, and so, those two themes weave themselves together. You've got these books with these stories about these characters, that are good self-contained books, but they also advance the plot towards bigger and better and more complex things. So, notwithstanding the fact that I personally find the books difficult to deal with, they are excellent, 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 believable science fiction books. You're not going to read The Expanse and say, oh, I don't think society would come like that, or I don't think that's going to happen, or I don't think that's a logical development of this particular technology. You find yourself nodding and agreeing and saying, yeah, all right, well, that makes sense. The characters are absolutely flawed, but also completely believable, and they, strive to rise above their natures and their situations to make a world a better place. And so overall, these are enjoyable books to read. So as always, I thank you for listening this long, and I will talk to you again later.